You are listening to Mining Stock Education, where you'll learn from the top leaders in the natural resource sector and uncover quality mining investment opportunities.
Welcome back to Mining Stock Education, and thanks for tuning in to another episode. I appreciate it. I'm Bill Powers, your host. If you'd like to engage the show, you can do so by emailing me at bill@MiningStockEducation.com. And over the past several months, I've received several emails inquiring how to get started in mining stock investing, and specifically how to access advisors or mentors that can be of service to new investors that are trying to get their feet wet in this sector. And what I advise for those that didn't email me and haven't gotten my answer is, if you are of the net worth where it would make sense, you could go for a full service broker, preferably someone like an economic geologist that understands the markets as well as geology that could help advise your investments. Second would be to subscribe to and engage with a quality newsletter writer. And my favorite are those that have obviously experience, but that will engage you on a personal level regarding your questions about your specific investments, or will engage you regarding their recommendations in their newsletter, engage your thoughts after you read their recommendations. And the third, and perhaps the most important, would be to develop your own personal network. And you do this by attending events such as we're going to talk today. I'm going to be speaking with the president of PDAC, the Prospectors Developers Association of Canada. His name is Mr. Felix Lee. And this convention is coming up March 1st through 4th in Toronto. The website to learn more is pdac.ca/convention, and I will put a link in the show notes. And the reason why you want to go to conferences and conventions is that this is going to help you develop your network. This is a multi-day conference. You get to meet geologists, CEO, newsletter writer, analysts, fellow investors. You just walk the floor, attend the seminars. You're going to bump into people, exchange business cards, and this is a good step for you to begin to develop your own network, to where when you have questions about a potential investment, you can email or call these people that you meet. The PDAC is the world's biggest mining convention. I believe there was 26,000 people last year or thereabouts that attended it. And it is, in my opinion, because I have gone to several different conferences that present different value to investors, this is the best conference to go to get a feel on the global vibe of the mining industry. And if you have a particular interest in a sector or a jurisdiction, there's no better conference, because you have people from all over the world. If you're interested in Peru, you can go talk to people from the Peruvian government, CEOs that are operating in Peru, or if you're interested in Eastern Europe, you can find the same. So it's just an excellent conference that I would encourage you to go to the website, check it out. If you can make it, it would be an excellent conference to go to. I will be there. This will be my 4th year in a row that I will be attending. Well, with that being said, Felix, welcome to Mining Stock Education. Congratulations. You are now the 37th president of the PDAC. Your background is that of an economic geologist with over 30 years experience. And just to further share who you are with my listeners, could you share a little more about your background and what was your path to becoming the 37th PDAC president?
Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you for having me and the PDAC on your show. I'm an exploration geologist by background. Graduated in economic geology back in the 1980s. I won't give a specific date and date myself, but my road to the PDAC and actually into mining was a bit convoluted. When I originally was in university, I was aiming to go into the oil and gas industry, and it was around that time in the mid '80s that the oil and gas industry took a bit of a nosedive, and by default, I ended up in the mining business and haven't looked back since. When I came out of university, I didn't really know very much about the mining industry. So much like perhaps many of your listeners, I came into the business knowing very little about the industry, how it operated, what the various opportunities there were in the business. And what I found was that many people in this industry are very, very kind. They're very generous in terms of sharing their knowledge and their experience and their wisdom. And many took me under their wing. So I am where I am today in this business largely because of the industry people and their generosity in sharing their knowledge and experience with me. With that in mind, I decided at one point in my career that it was time to give back to the industry. So I joined the board of the PDAC about 13 years ago. And eventually sort of set myself down the path to becoming the PDAC president, and here I am.
Speaking to mining stock investors, what would be some of the key trends in mining that you think investors should pay attention to?
Here in Canada, there's been quite a number of things that have been taking place. Some would view what's happening as quite challenging. The industry, however, is full of optimism, so where we see challenges, we also see opportunities. So, some of the exciting things that are happening here in Canada, as well as in the global mining and exploration business, is the adoption of new technologies in exploration, and technologies that are designed to improve the discovery success rate. Being able to find deposits much more quickly, much more efficiently, as well as reducing overall environmental impact of our activities. So such technologies might include artificial intelligence and machine learning as it's applied to exploration targeting, as well as using new technologies such as geophysics or geochemistry to discover the deposits. Additionally, our industry is making a lot of headway when it comes to building strong and mutually beneficial partnerships with Indigenous peoples. So one of the I guess you could call it recent challenges facing our industry is building long-term successful relationships within the communities that we as an industry operate. And in many times, where we operate, we're working with Indigenous communities. So it's been, I would say, quite a learning curve for our industry, but we are getting to the point where I think we are starting to make a lot of progress on that front. So it's an exciting time for our industry when it comes to, sort of providing the economic opportunities for Indigenous peoples, and being able to allow them to participate in a meaningful way in the exploration process and mining activities.
In addition to this positive occurrence, are there any other positive trends or laws that you see occurring in Canada right now?
Well, right now there's quite a big push for responsible exploration and mining practices. So there's quite a big push on the environmental side, on the social side, as well as health and safety performance. So as an industry, pretty much every company, whether you're big or small, you're pushing forward to improve your performance in these areas. One area that is of quite exciting to PDAC is seeing improvements when it comes to performance in diversity and inclusion, particularly with respect to gender diversity, and so these are areas that you'll see reflected in some of the material or the content at the PDAC Convention.
The industry, it is harder for especially a woman that wants to have a family to really be out there in the bush all the time, though, isn't it? So how in addition to the laws, is there anything the companies can do to make it more accommodating to females?
You're absolutely right. In fact, actually, it's hard for depending on what stage you're at in your career. You may find that male or female, you may find that the life of an exploration geologist is difficult. So Very early on, when you come out of school, most of us are single, and we're all eager to get into the bush and work in the field. There comes a point in time, of course, when we decide to get married, maybe start a family, male or female. It's difficult when you're away all the time. And so you're absolutely correct. There are things that the industry can do and companies can do, and they are implementing. Many companies are taking it to heart and making it a little easier, or doing the best they can to make it easier for people to find that work-life balance in the business. What is helping as well is again, as I mentioned, sort of the adoption of new technology. So there is technology which is coming out that is making it easier for people to sort of maintain a career in the business while also sort of keeping your family. So there's new technologies that are being implemented that allow for a considerable amount of remote operation of mining equipment. So people can actually operate mining equipment, work at a mine, but work from the comfort of essentially their home, if you will. So from an office environment that's close to home, they can essentially have a 9-to-5 working job. So the industry is coming a long way. It's certainly not what you might think as kind of a backward sunset industry. It's a very high-tech industry. It's getting increasingly more high-tech as new technologies make their way into the industry. And as such, it's becoming a little easier to attract people, both male and female, at different sort of stages in their career development to the industry. So, attracting people and hanging on to them are a big part of some of the challenges that our industry is facing, and we're taking them head on.
The mining sector contributes a lot to the Canadian economy, and so therefore there are many favorable Canadian laws such as flow-through financing and such that helps mineral exploration. But if you were sitting down with some of the governing bodies in Canada, what would be some of your suggestions for perhaps ways they could further help and improve mineral exploration in Canada?
Okay, that's a very good question. So there's quite a number of things that PDAC works on, throughout the year with the Canadian government, where we do a lot of work advocating on behalf of the mineral exploration industry. And so some of the things that we've been pushing for, particularly in the 2020 Canadian government federal budget, is we're really pushing for the government to show to show some strong support for the sector's role in the low carbon future. And so we believe the mining industry, perhaps more than any other industry, is key to securing and implementing a successful low carbon economy in future. And so we're hoping that the government can potentially provide sort of mineral sector specific funding or tax incentives to encourage exploration, specifically in or for the minerals and metals that are vital to a low carbon economy. So this would include things such as battery metals, lithium, cobalt, vanadium, graphite, in addition to nickel and so on. So we would like to see the government provide more support in that area. And additionally, we'd also like to see the government here in Canada provide sort of more support in terms of investment in the northern parts of the country, where Canada really does suffer from an infrastructure deficit. Without the infrastructure, the cost of exploring and mining and producing the metals out of the far north here in Canada is quite expensive. And so investment in infrastructure in the far north, we believe, will go a long way to reducing the cost of producing metals out of the far north. In addition, we've been really asking the government to support the industry in terms of investment in Indigenous communities to, again, further their ability to participate in the sector, and be able to benefit from the economic opportunities that our sector has to offer. So those are some of the things that we're pushing for here in Canada. Canada does continue to be viewed as one of the prime destinations to explore and mine. But that being said, there's still quite a number of things that we could be doing here in the country to make Canada much more competitive and make Canada much more attractive as a place to explore and mine.
Felix, as I mentioned in my introduction, one of the things I appreciate most about the PDAC convention is the global feel and the global vibe that you get when you are there. So for a Western investor, or I should say a North American investor like myself, as you look worldwide in the mining sector, are there any mining jurisdictions that perhaps you think North American investors are not paying as much attention to, but perhaps they should start paying more attention to?
I'd have to say that there really aren't very many places in the world that haven't been looked at one point by Western mining investors or explorationists, especially when we talk about the exploration side of the business. Exploration dollars are quite mobile, and jurisdictions, I think it's safe to say jurisdictions are continually competing with one another to attract their share of exploration activity and investment. So the investors that I know are constantly scanning the world and the countries, and really they're looking at countries. They're looking at quite a number of key factors when it comes to where they decide to ultimately put their money. So such things as government policy, government regulation, the regulatory environment, things such as sort of environmental permitting, taxation, the lack of infrastructure, the infrastructure or lack thereof, the ability to access land and land title are all factors that will be considered by an investor when it comes to deciding where to put their investment dollars. And so these things change constantly within countries, and so one day a particular country might be very attractive, and not long after it becomes unattractive, and the exploration dollars move elsewhere. And so I guess to answer your question, to come back to your question, are there any rising mining jurisdictions? I would say pretty much Western investors are quite familiar with most of the mining countries that are out there, and are constantly carefully looking at each of these countries and gauging just how attractive these countries are in both the short and long term as a place to put investment dollars. So it's with this in mind that PDAC's advocacy efforts are always geared towards trying to ensure Canada remains competitive on the world stage when it comes to mining and mineral exploration, and ensuring that we retain our fair share of those exploration mining dollars. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we're always pushing the government here in Canada to make investments in such things as infrastructure in the north, making investments in Indigenous communities so as to allow them to participate in a much more meaningful way in our industry. And these things can change very quickly. They can make Canada very competitive, or they can make Canada just slightly that less competitive, and the exploration dollars will go elsewhere.
With this upcoming convention in about 2 months in Toronto, downtown Toronto, what are the unique things about this year's conventions that mining investors could look forward to? Well,
I would say for the benefit of your listeners, the convention is quite an extraordinary event. It is, as you said earlier, the world's largest or the world's premier mineral exploration and mining show. And there's pretty much everything for everyone at this show. We did have just a little over 25,000 attendees last year from 135 countries, with about 35 countries represented with sizable government delegations here. And so the sheer size is ultimately what makes the show unique, and I think of interest perhaps to your listeners. So you have all the companies themselves, exploration companies that are attending. So if one of your investors is interested in a particular company or a particular geographic locale or geological environment, chances are you're going to be able to find companies that are working in those places and have the chance to speak with them. If there are countries that or geographical locales that your investors perhaps are interested in, those countries are represented and we'll have a booth at the convention as well, so you can actually collect or gather information on the countries, speak to representatives from those countries, and learn about whether or not this is a place that you'd like to invest in. Additionally, the convention has a whole number of programs focused on the various areas of concern impacting our industry sector. So there's the capital markets program. So concerns with respect to mineral financing or new trends or developments concerning mineral financing will be covered under the capital markets program. We have a sustainability program. We have an indigenous program. We also have a sizable student program. And so we have about 1,600 students from around the world that attend the conference every year. So it's a great time. It's a great opportunity to try and learn as an investor about what's going on in the industry, where the hotbeds of activity are, as well as perhaps get a better feel or sense of the issues that the industry is dealing with and how they're dealing with it. And last but not least, given that there are 25,000 people there, the chances are you're going to run into like-minded investors that you can trade notes with. So this speaks to the networking that you alluded to earlier. Networking. The show is a terrific time to meet like-minded investors, people who share your interest in a particular country or company or geographical location. So there's something in the convention for everyone.
I will be at the convention, and it is upcoming March 1st through 4th in downtown Toronto. Website again is PDAC.ca/convention, and there is a link in the show description below. Well, Felix, thank you for your time today and giving us an overview of the mineral exploration industry and what to expect at this upcoming conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.